Hey, my name is Natalie, and I'm 35 years old. I've been working as a marketing director at a fast-growing tech company in downtown Seattle for the past 10 years. It's a job that keeps me busy long days filled with deadlines, strategy, meetings, and late nights. I've always loved the challenge, the creativity, and the rush of building something from the ground up. There's something about leading a campaign, watching it grow, and seeing the results that keeps me on my toes. My professional life is my anchor, and honestly, I never imagined I'd be the kind of person to leave much room for personal distractions. My career, my goals, and my ambition have always been my focus. But the truth is, despite all the success, I've always carried around a quiet ache, nagging feeling that something important is missing. That something was Aaron. I met Aaron when I was 19, back when life was simpler and the world seemed like an endless adventure. We were both in college, living our best lives, brimming with dreams of the future. Aaron was charming in a way that made you feel like he was the only person in the room. He was driven, ambitious, and had big ideas about what he wanted to achieve. In life, we clicked instantly. His quick wit matched my sarcasm, and his ambition was something I admired deeply. Together, we made a perfect pair. We spent countless nights talking about our dreams, traveling the world, starting businesses, and growing old together in a little house by the beach. We had this quiet confidence that we were invincible, that our love could withstand anything. After college, Aaron moved across the country to chase his dream of building a tech startup. I stayed behind in Seattle to help my family with our small but growing business, thinking the distance would be temporary. He promised he would be back soon, that once his career was on track, we'd finally be together. We had a plan, and I believed in it with all my heart, but as the months turned into years, the distance between us grew, not just physically but emotionally. I watched Aaron climb the ranks of his career, heard about his growing success, and knew that his life was blossoming, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The calls became fewer, the texts more sporadic. I would hear from him once a week, sometimes once a month, and the conversations felt more like small talk than the deep, meaningful connections we used to share. It was as if the space between us was beginning to stretch in a way that neither of us could repair. Despite it all, I held on to the idea that we were meant to be together. I clung to the hope that one day Aaron would come back to me, that when everything in his life was settled, he would return, and we would pick up right where we left off, that life doesn't wait for anyone, and sometimes it moves forward without you. The call came at a time I was least expecting. I was at work finishing up a major campaign presentation for a new client when my phone buzzed on the desk. The number on the screen wasn't one I recognized, but something about it made my heart race. When I picked up, I didn't expect it to be Aaron. I hadn't heard from him in weeks, and the last time we spoke, things felt distant. "Hey, Nat." Aaron's voice came through the line. It sounded strained, like he had been rehearsing what he was about to say. My heart skipped a beat, a wave of both relief and apprehension rushing through me. "Aaron, how's everything going?" I asked, trying to sound casual, even though I could feel a knot forming in my stomach. "I've been good," he replied. There was a pause before he continued, his tone turning serious. "Actually, I've been better than good. I've met someone not, and I'm getting married." I froze. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, stealing the air from my lungs. "Married? To someone else?" I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. The air around me felt thick, suffocating. Aaron was getting married. The man who had once promised me the world, the man who had been my partner, my confidant, was about to marry someone else. I had no idea what to say. It felt like my whole world was crumbling in front of me, and all I could do was stand there, silent, Trying to process the truth. I know this is a lot to take in, Aaron said, his voice soft, almost apologetic. I've been wanting to tell you for a while, but I wasn't sure how. I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to scream, to shout at him that this wasn't fair, that we were supposed to be together. But instead, all I could manage was a quiet when. Next month, he replied, his words like cold water crashing down on me. Her name is Emily. She's great, Nat. She's everything I thought I needed. His words sliced through me, each one like a dagger. But what about us? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What about everything we had planned? Aaron sighed, and there was a long pause on the other end of the line. I don't know, Nat. I don't know what happened. But I think I've realized that Emily and I have a future. I never stopped caring about you, but it's just not the same anymore. The line went silent. I didn't know what to say. The man I had spent years waiting for, the man I thought I would marry, was telling me he was marrying someone else. There was nothing I could do to change it. No amount of begging or pleading would make him see me the way he once had. I'm happy for you. Aaron, I finally managed, my voice thick with tears. I want you to be happy. But even as I said those words, I felt a piece of myself breaking. Inside, I had spent so many years holding on to the hope that one day Aaron and I would find our way back to each other. But now I knew the truth. He had already moved on. And as much as I wanted to fight for him, I knew that sometimes love isn't enough to hold two people together. The days that followed were a blur. I went through the motions of my daily life meetings, emails, calls, but my mind was constantly drifting back to Aaron. I kept seeing his face in my mind, hearing his voice in my thoughts, and wondering what could have been. But the reality was that he had chosen someone else. The life I had dreamed of was slipping through my fingers, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. It took everything in me to push past the pain. I threw myself into my work, hoping that the busy days would drown out the ache in my chest. But every night when I returned to my empty apartment, I was reminded of what I had lost. Aaron's wedding day came and went. I kept my distance, choosing not to attend, knowing it would be too painful. I told myself that I was doing the right thing, that it was better for me to let go and move on. But in my heart, I knew that wasn't true. Part of me would always wonder what could have been, and I would always carry a piece of him with me. Even if he didn't feel the same way anymore, it wasn't until 3 years later at a business conference in San Francisco that I would see him again. And when I did, I would finally understand just how much had been left unsaid and how much I had truly never let go. 3 years passed and life moved forward as it always does, whether you're ready for it or not. I had convinced myself that I was over Aaron. I had buried the remnants of our past deep inside me, focusing on my career and trying to make sense of the life I had built without him. I still thought about him from time to time, especially on quiet nights, when I found myself alone with my thoughts, but I didn't let it consume me. I moved forward. Slowly, cautiously, but surely. I had met a few people along the way, some serious, others less so, but nothing ever stuck. In my heart, I still compared everyone to Aaron, and no one could measure up. Not that I admitted that to anyone, least of all myself. Then came the invitation, a business conference in San Francisco. It was a huge event, one I couldn't afford to miss. My company was rolling out a major campaign, and I was expected to present some new strategies. It was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So, despite the fact that I had never been fond of conferences, I booked my flight and prepared to immerse myself in the professional side of life. The personal side of me, that was buried, tucked away neatly behind the walls I had built. But when I walked into the ballroom on the first evening of the conference, I never expected to see him. Aaron. It was as if the world shifted when our eyes met across the crowded room. He was standing near the bar, talking to a group of people. The noise, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, all of it faded as I saw him, looking exactly like the man I had once known so intimately, and yet somehow not the same. He was taller, more confident, his hair a little grayer, but those familiar, warm brown eyes, they were still the same. The way he carried himself, the subtle tilt of his head when he listened to someone, it was all him. But it was also different. For a long moment, neither of us moved. I felt my pulse quicken, my throat tighten. My body went into autopilot, but my mind was frozen. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I didn't know if I should walk up to him, pretend nothing had happened, or walk the other way and avoid the painful history that was now resurfacing. But then he saw me. Aaron's eyes locked with mine, and for a moment, the rest of the world disappeared. His expression flickered with recognition, followed by a mixture of surprise and hesitation. He blinked once, and then a faint smile tugged at the corners of his lips. It was that smile, the one that had once been so familiar, the one that made my heart flutter in the most unexpected ways. "Natalie?" His voice was soft but unmistakable. It was like being hit by a wave of emotion. Every memory, every feeling I had pushed aside came rushing back in an instant. It was like no time had passed at all. Despite the years, despite the pain of the past, standing here in front of him felt as if we had never been apart. I nodded, still in shock. "Aaron." My voice trailed off, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything more. He looked just as unsure as I felt. It had been years, and yet here we were, standing in a ballroom, surrounded by strangers, both of us suddenly thrust back into a shared past that we couldn't ignore. I thought I had moved on. I thought I had let him go. But seeing him here, after all this time, made me question everything I had believed about myself. About us. He stepped toward me, his movement slow, almost cautious. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I didn't expect to see you either," I replied, forcing a smile. Though my heart was pounding in my chest. There was an awkward silence that followed, one that neither of us knew how to break. It was clear from the way we stood there apart, yet close, that we were both uncertain of what to do with the emotion swirling between us. The man who had once meant everything to me was now a stranger I had to navigate carefully. Aaron cleared his throat, his voice soft but sincere. I'm glad you're here, Natalie. I never imagined we'd run into each other like this." I nodded, feeling the weight of the years between us. "Yeah, life has a funny way of surprising you." He chuckled, a sound that made my heart ache. It was the same laugh I remembered, deep and full of life, that it does. We stood there for a long moment, unsure of where to go from here. The noise of the conference had returned in the background, but it felt distant, muted. All I could focus on was the man in front of me, the man who had once been my entire world, the man who had married someone else. "How have you been?" Aaron asked, his gaze steady, but I could see the questions lingering behind his eyes. He was still looking at me as if he was trying to piece together a puzzle that had been left incomplete. I could tell he hadn't forgotten me either. "I've been good." "Busy with work," I replied, trying to keep the conversation light. "You know, the usual." He nodded, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes. I'm glad you're doing well." "Yeah," I said, trying to shake off the heaviness. "It's been a while." Another silence stretched between us. I could tell there were so many things Aaron wanted to say, so many things I wanted to ask, but neither of us knew how to bridge the gap that had formed between us. So Aaron started, breaking the tension. "I know this might be awkward, but would you want to grab a drink? Catch up? We don't have to stay in this crowded ballroom." I hesitated for a moment, torn between the pull of curiosity and the fear of reopening old wounds. But then I realized that we were standing in this moment for a reason. Time had passed, and the life I had built without him had been good, but I wasn't the same person anymore. And neither was Aaron. I nodded, the decision almost instinctual. Sure, I'd like that. We walked together toward the quieter side of the venue, the noise fading as we made our way to a small, intimate lounge area. I could feel the tension between us still, but it was different now, less painful, more familiar. We sat down, and for the first time in years, I found myself face to face with the man I had once believed I would spend my life with. I know. This is a lot to take in, Aaron said after a long moment, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my heart skip. But I've thought about you a lot over the years. I didn't forget about us, Natalie. His words, so simple and yet so loaded, hit me harder than I had expected. I never stopped thinking about you either, I admitted, my voice barely. I whisper. The truth of it was there, plain and undeniable. No matter how much time had passed, no matter how much I had tried to bury him in the back of my mind, Aaron was a part of me. Always had been. Aaron leaned in slightly, his gaze intense. I've made mistakes. I'm sure you can see that. I nodded, the years of pain and confusion flooding back. You got married. You chose Emily. You moved on. The pain of those words was still sharp, but I didn't let it show. I didn't expect it to hurt this much, I added softly, my eyes lowering to my drink. I thought I was over it. But seeing you again, hearing you talk about us, it brings everything back. I never wanted to hurt you, Natalie, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I was lost. I thought I was doing the right thing, but deep down, I never stopped loving you. His words were both a balm and a wound. I had waited for him to say something like this for so long, but now that I had heard it, I wasn't sure what it meant anymore. I don't know what to do with that. I whispered. Aaron reached across the table, his hand gently brushing mine. His touch was familiar, warm, and for a moment, it felt like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. We have a lot to talk about, he said quietly. But I'm willing to start, if you are. I looked up at him, the man I once thought I would never see again, and I realized something. Life had given us both second chances. The question was, would we take them? The days following that evening, where we sat on my apartment balcony, felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. Aaron and I spent more time together, building a bridge that had once seemed impossible to repair. The walls between us slowly crumbled as we spoke openly about our fears, our regrets, our hopes. We spoke about everything, and the more we did, the more I realized how much I had missed him. It wasn't just the love we had once shared. It was the connection, the comfort, the undeniable truth that no matter how much time had passed, Aaron was still the person I felt most myself with. I had spent years pretending that I was okay without him. I built a life without him in it, focused on my career, and kept my heart guarded. But when Aaron walked back into my life, I realized something I hadn't fully understood until then. I had never really moved on. He had been a part of me, a part of my soul, and no matter how far apart we had grown, I still loved him. We had spent years apart, each of us living separate lives. Aaron had married Emily, and I had been left with a broken heart, trying to piece together what we had lost. But now, as we sat together, having learned from our mistakes and growing from the time we had spent apart, I realized that our story wasn't over. It had simply been paused, waiting for the right moment to begin again. That moment had come. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of the past, of the man who married someone else. As much as I hated to admit it, I had let go of Aaron once. But I wasn't going to do it again. I was ready to choose him again. One evening, a few weeks after our first real conversation, Aaron invited me to dinner at a small, quiet restaurant, overlooking the water. It was the kind of place that felt personal, intimate, a place where If you looked around, you could almost forget the rest of the world existed. We sat by the window, the dim light from the candle on our table flickering. Between us, it felt like we were in a world of our own. Do you remember our first date? Aaron asked, breaking the silence as he looked at me across the table, a soft smile playing on his lips. I chuckled, the memory coming back like it was yesterday. How could I forget? You were late as usual, and you insisted that we share an appetizer even though I wasn't hungry. Aaron grinned, his eyes sparkling with the old charm that I remembered so well. I thought I could win you over with food. I laughed, shaking my head. You did. You always knew how to make me laugh. There was a pause, a quiet moment where the weight of the years between us felt insignificant. It wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about us right here, right now. I've made a lot of mistakes. Nat, Aaron said, his tone serious, the warmth of the moment slipping away for a moment. But the biggest mistake was letting you go. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I can't live with the regret of not trying to make it right with you. I felt my heart swell, the sincerity in his voice hitting me deeper than I expected. I've been holding on to the past for too long, I whispered. I didn't want to admit it, but I never stopped loving you. Aaron reached across the table, taking my hand in his. The warmth of his touch, the way he held my hand so gently, made me feel like everything we had been through had led to this moment, this decision. I'm ready to choose you. Nat, he said quietly, I'm ready to fight for us. I know we can't undo what's been done, but I believe we can build something better, something real. Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked at him, a mixture of relief and joy flooding me. I'm ready too, I whispered. I'm ready to take that chance. I want to build something with you, Aaron, but it's going to take time. It won't be easy. Aaron smiled, his eyes soft with understanding. I know, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. We spent the rest of the evening talking about the future, what it could look like, what we both wanted, what we both feared. We talked about the life we had always planned, but this time we both knew it wouldn't be the same as before. We would have to create something new, but that was okay. We would make it work because we had both grown. We had both learned from our mistakes, and now we were finally ready to build a future, not just as individuals, but as a couple. Months passed. Aaron and I took our time, slowly but surely rebuilding the trust that had been broken and learning to love each other again. It wasn't perfect, but nothing in life ever is. There were days of doubt, moments when we questioned whether we were making the right decision, but we always came back to each other. We talked about everything, our fears, our dreams, the things we had been too afraid to say in the past. But through it all, one thing remained constant, our love. Aaron was patient, understanding, and gave me the space I needed to heal from the wounds of the past. He never rushed me, never expected me to forget the hurt, but instead allowed me to process it in my own time. He listened, really listened, when I needed to talk about what had happened with Emily and how it had hurt me. And I listened when he talked about his own regrets and the choices he had made. Together, we learned how to communicate, how to put our hearts on the line, and how to trust each other again. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. 1 year after our reunion, Aaron and I were standing on the same balcony where we had talked about our future that evening, looking out at the city lights. I had come a long way from the woman who had once believed that Aaron had married someone else and moved on. The past had shaped me, but it no longer defined me. Aaron wrapped his arms around me from behind, pulling me close. I leaned back into him, feeling his heartbeat against my back. We've come a long way, I said softly, a smile tugging at my lips. We have, Aaron replied, his voice thick with emotion. And I'll spend the rest of my life making up for lost time. I turned in his arms, facing him. I believe you, I whispered, my hands cupping his face. With that, I kissed him. The same kiss we had shared all those years ago, but this time it was different. It wasn't about the past, and it wasn't about the mistakes. It was about us right here, right now, choosing each other. We weren't perfect, but we were exactly where we were meant to be, and that I realized was enough.